Most buyers right now are making one huge mistake. They're negotiating the price of the home instead of negotiating the terms. And that mistake could be costing them hundreds of dollars every month. Because in today's market, smart buyers actually have leverage again. And if you know how to use seller concessions correctly, you may be able to lower your payment far more than simply offering less for the house.
When you see the average price premium discount at 3 to 4%, and of course, in this case, we're talking discount, the premium pricing seems to have gone away. That's a pretty healthy amount of concession that sellers are making in selling their homes. They're ending up selling their homes for 3 to 4% below their original list price. Again, a very strong clue. Both the sellers, hey, there's other ways that you can entice a buyer than just dropping your price. And then the signals to the buyers, if you're looking at a home in a particular city or frankly anywhere in this valley, when you see this kind of data, what that's telling you is you probably have a 3 to 4% amount of wiggle room in making your offer. Then it's just a question of how do you extract that 3 to 4% discount. And again, I'll touch on that once again in a minute. And then I want to give you that same data, but on a city by city basis. And of course, there's your Bermuda Dunes, where the average discount from list price is the highest at 5%. And then you see, on average, most other markets, they're in the middle, from Palm Desert going to the left to Indian Wells, again in that 2.5, high twos to mid to high threes range. And then only when you get into the cities that have the lower price levels, where home affordability is more present, then you don't have as much discount from list price. You can see there, Cathedral City 2%, Indio under 2%, and then Desert Hot Springs and Coachella, right around 1.5. So again, if you're here in the valley and you're looking to buy a home with this kind of data, I would be looking at those particular cities in that mid part of the chart to the right, all the way to Bermuda Dunes. These numbers tell you you've got some room to negotiate, and as a consequence, I think you need to take advantage of that. So I'm going to bring Jeff back on so he and I can discuss a little bit about numbers and what it means for the market.
Art, I wish I was in the market to buy a house, because everything you told me from the beginning to now, it's like the clues are all over the place. It's like if it was Easter and I was looking for eggs, they're everywhere and they're plain sight.
Right. Well, exactly right. And that's why, I look at this report every month. And again, we've talked about all of these issues many, many times on this show. I can't twist people's arms to make them buy a home. I can't twist a seller's arm to, price their home right. But what this data shows is that as everyone, as sellers put their home on the market, and when you see some of these, data points, higher inventory, higher days on market, the discount from list price, averages that we're now seeing, my gosh, that is so clear. I think so compelling that we ought to be able to, we should be seeing, especially when we go back and look at the start when we were talking about the economic numbers, where the economy seems to actually be in pretty good shape, and people are experiencing real, after inflation wage growth, and they seem to be spending freely. There needs to be a reallocation in families and households and how they're spending their money, and redirect some of that to get a home if they're one of these 40-year-old first-time home buyers that are still renting. I don't understand why, with these kind of conditions, unless it's a lack of knowing about these conditions, and that may be a big part of it, which is why I wanted to go over this today. The conditions are screaming, I think, particularly on the buyer side. You've got some leverage. You've got to take advantage of it. And if you can get a concession from a seller at 3 to 4% of the original list price, I don't think folks realize how powerful that can be when it's applied toward the financing of the property if they need to get a loan to buy.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. This whole thing, like, we look at Bermuda Dunes at 5% discount. And so people will go in there and offer 5% less than the selling price, but that's not as beneficial as something you've been talking about now for 2 years on this program. And that's seller concessions. Can you give us just an example, off the top of your head of a 5% discount versus, wow, if you used a seller concession, what that means?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's use Bermuda Dunes as an example. Now, that's a smaller city in the Coachella Valley, and there's not a ton of homes there, but there are homes listed there, and they're going to be at a pretty good price level. In fact, I saw a listing not long ago, and it was in the 800. So let's take 800. If it's a home that's 800,000 in Bermuda Dunes, and it's been on the market, for 50 days, and it's still at 800. There hasn't been a price reduction, but the listing agent is talking to the seller, who's wringing their hands about, you're not getting my home sold. What do I need to do to get my home sold? And so often, it's the same old strategy that I think lacks imagination, which is, well, let's just lower our price. Well, if we're at 800,000 and the data says that on average, we're probably going to sell for 5% below our list. Well, we need to lower our price to 760, right? 5% of 800, 760. Well, okay. And we've talked before, when you do that, and if you're financing your purchase, and let's say you're putting 20% down, are you going to see an improvement in your monthly payment by just offering 5% below list at 760? Yes, you will. But as I've said before, I say it often, every $6 of loan amount's worth, every $1,000 of loan amount's $6. So a $40,000 offer below list of 800 is going to lower your payment. Well, 80% of 400, that means your loan amount is going to be lowered by 32,000, and of course, $6, 32,000. It's about $180 a month. Okay, pretty decent savings, right? Relatively speaking. But imagine if you take and offer that full 800, and you say, I want 40,000 concession, but I want it as a credit. And then, what does that mean? Well, if you get $40,000 and you're putting 20% down, what we can do with that in terms of a rate buy down is extremely good. I mean, I could either take that 40,000, I can do a permanent rate buy down to where if you're getting a conforming conventional loan with 80% loan to value, so 20% down, if we're hovering around 6%, with that 40,000, I could probably take and lower that rate 30-year fixed by at least 1%, maybe even down to 5 or possibly even slightly below 5.
Wow.
The difference in payment versus just lowering your offer price and taking all the concession in price and not in credit in dollars from the seller, it's crazy, the difference. I mean, you're probably going to save $700, $800, $900 a month with that strategy.
Wow.
And of course, the other alternative is, buy yourself a 2 to 3 year window of getting even really below market rates by looking at that 3-2-1 or 2-1 on the rate grid of our website with $40,000. Now, a 3-2-1 buy down, for example, the average cost of that is about 4.5%. Now, but keep in mind, and of course, this can get complicated if you're not good at math, I guess. Remember that the cost of the buy down at 4.5% isn't 4.5% of 800. It's 4.5% of your loan amount, which means that 4.5% of loan amount isn't 4.5% of the price, the list price. It's probably more like 3.5%. So from the seller's perspective, that's not as much of a hit to them. But with that 4.5% cost for the buy down, you can get a rate and payment schedule based on 3% the first year, 4% the second year, 5% the third year. You're not going to be at the 6% note rate until year 4. Well, that gives you what? A 3-year window when rates overall finally drop to refinance into a lower note rate. And if you do that before your buy down period's over, That money's not lost. That money left over in your buy down account goes into the payoff amount of your loan. So you still get that remaining money if you didn't complete the entire buy down schedule. Can do the same thing with a temporary buy down. On a temporary buy down, the average cost is about 2.25% of your loan amount. And again, off the loan amount, not the purchase price, not the list price that you're offering full price. So again, if you get that $40,000, I got to tell you, I could do a 2-1 buy down and give you a 4% first year, 5% second year, and then your 6% third year, and you're going to have a ton of dough left over to pay all your other closing costs. Or we go ahead and do the 3-2-1, and again, we will have some money left over to apply towards your closing costs. So you're attacking both your interest rate and payment level, as well as reducing the amount of total cash you need to complete the purchase. If you simply realize that concession that you think the data shows you can get, and it says 5% of Bermuda dudes, please try to talk to your realtor, your agent if you're a buyer, talk to your agent if you're a seller, talk to somebody like us, and let us show you the alternative that can be, I think, a better win-win for both sides of the transaction. So that's just something that I just want to keep reminding everybody that there are better ways to capture these concession limits or these discount amounts than just asking for a lower price. And again, sorry to be a broken record, who understands that better than anyone? New home builders. They do this all the time. That's how they manage to prop up their sales, even in the face of a challenging market. Now, does that mean their margins are compressed a little bit? Sure. But they're in the business of building and selling homes. The worst thing for them is carrying inventory. They're not going to do that. They'll do what they have to do to address this kind of challenge. And that makes the buyer happy. And of course, they're still selling homes. And most of these major home builders aren't going anywhere. They're doing just fine. So the existing home market, I think, needs to take a page out of that book and apply it to their particular situation.